The night sky over Boston shimmered with city lights when Benjamin Carter's private jet sliced through the darkness, landing several hours ahead of schedule. His staff wasn't expecting him. Not even his wife knew he'd decided to come home early. He had closed a billion-dollar deal in Singapore and wanted to surprise his family, especially his 8-year-old son, Jacob, who had begged him not to miss his school recital again. Benjamin thought the look on his boy's face would be worth more than any contract he'd ever signed. When his car pulled up to the Grand Carter estate, the mansion stood silent except for the gentle hum of the garden lights. It was past 9. The housekeeper, driver, and most of the staff were gone for the night. He entered quietly, not wanting to wake anyone, until he heard faint voices drifting from the study. Curious, he followed the sound. As he drew closer, he froze. Inside the warmly lit study, sitting across from his son at the big oak desk, was Marlene, the maid. She was in her late 30s, dark-skinned, with kind eyes and a worn uniform that had seen better days. Jacob sat across from her, pencil in hand, brows furrowed in concentration. Benjamin narrowed his eyes. Marlene wasn't cleaning. She wasn't dusting. She was teaching. Sound it out, honey, Marlene said softly. You got this. Take your time. Responsibility. Jacob said hesitantly. Marlene smiled, her voice glowing with warmth. Yes. That's it, baby. Responsibility. You're getting better every day. Benjamin stood at the door, hidden in the shadows, confused and strangely intrigued. Why was his maid teaching his son vocabulary words? He'd hired 3 private tutors for Jacob, each one charging more per hour than Marlene made in a week. What was she doing here this late? Jacob beamed at her. Miss Marlene, you make it easy. The tutors always yell when I get stuff wrong. They just want you to learn, she said gently. But there's no rush. The best learning comes when you're not afraid to make mistakes. Benjamin's chest tightened. Those words echoed in his mind. He hadn't thought about it before, but maybe that was why Jacob's confidence had dropped lately. Then Jacob asked something that made Benjamin's breath hitch. Miss Marlene, did you really not finish school? Marlene hesitated, her eyes flickering down to the table. No, sweetheart, I didn't. I had to help my mama raise my brothers. But I always loved learning. Books were like my little vacations. Jacob frowned. That's not fair. You should have gone to school. She smiled softly. Sometimes, life doesn't go as planned. But that doesn't mean we stop learning. That's why I read every night after work. See? There's always a way. Benjamin felt a strange tug at his heart. He hadn't expected to be moved by a conversation between his maid and his son, but something about Marlene's quiet dignity unsettled him. He watched a moment longer before clearing his throat. Both heads turned. Jacob's face lit up. Dad! Marlene's expression shifted to shock, then fear. She stood quickly, hands trembling. Mr. Carter, I didn't know you were home, sir. I'm so sorry, I was just helping him with. Benjamin raised a hand. It's fine. Jacob ran to him, hugging his leg. Dad, Miss Marlene's teaching me new words. She's really good at it. Benjamin forced a smile, patting his son's hair. That's nice. He turned to Marlene. Can I speak with you for a moment? Marlene swallowed hard and nodded, following him into the hallway. Benjamin closed the study door gently behind them. Why exactly were you teaching my son? He asked, his tone calm but firm. Marlene clasped her hands. Sir, Jacob was struggling with his homework. I found him crying in the kitchen a few nights ago after his tutor left. I just wanted to help him understand his reading. I didn't mean to overstep. You did, Benjamin interrupted. You're not paid to teach. You're paid to keep the house in order. Her shoulders slumped. I understand, sir. I'll stop. I'm sorry. Benjamin studied her for a long moment. Something about her tone, respectful, yet steady, made it hard for him to stay angry. He exhaled. You can finish tonight. But from tomorrow on, leave the tutoring to the professionals. Yes, sir, she said softly, then returned to the study. When she was gone, Benjamin lingered in the hallway, staring at the closed door. He should have felt satisfied for restoring order, but instead, there was a heaviness in his chest. Later that night, after tucking Jacob into bed, Benjamin sat in his home office, trying to focus on emails. But his mind kept circling back to what he'd seen. Marlene's patience. Her kindness. The way Jacob had smiled, a smile Benjamin hadn't seen in months. His wife, Claire, entered, tying her silk robe. You're home early. Could have told me. Wanted to surprise you, he said absently. She leaned against the doorway. Did you see Jacob? He's been happier lately. Maybe it's that new tutor. Benjamin hesitated. It's not the tutor. It's Marlene. Who? The maid. Claire frowned. What about her? She's been teaching him. Reading. Vocabulary. I caught them tonight. Claire crossed her arms, irritation flashing in her eyes. That's completely inappropriate. We can't have staff overstepping like that. I know, Benjamin said slowly. But Jacob seems to respond to her. He listens to her. She's a maid, Ben. Not an educator. I'm aware. Claire sighed, waving her hand dismissively. Then deal with it. Fire her if you have to. We can hire another one tomorrow. She turned and left before he could respond. But Benjamin didn't want to fire Marlene. Something told him that would be a mistake. The next morning, as sunlight streamed into the kitchen, Benjamin poured coffee and watched from the window as Marlene hung laundry on the line. Jacob was outside too, helping her clip towels, chatting non-stop. When Marlene laughed, it was genuine and light, a sound that didn't belong to someone whose life was burdened by struggle. Benjamin noticed how Jacob mimicked her, laughing just as freely. He walked outside, hands in his pockets. Marlene. She turned quickly, startled. Good morning, sir. I wanted to ask you something, Benjamin said. Why didn't you tell me Jacob was struggling? She hesitated, eyes flickering toward the boy. I didn't think it was my place. You have tutors, sir. I just wanted to help where I could. He nodded slowly. You read every night, don't you? She blinked. Yes, sir. Mostly from old books I get from the library. I like learning new words. Makes me feel capable. There was no arrogance in her voice, only quiet pride. Benjamin said nothing for a while, then asked, would you be interested in continuing to help Jacob? Unofficially, I mean. Just keep doing what you're doing. Her eyes widened. Sir, are you sure? Mrs. Carter. I'll handle Claire, he said firmly. Just focus on Jacob. You seem to understand him better than anyone. A faint smile touched her lips. Thank you, sir. I'll do my best. Over the next few weeks, the mansion felt lighter. Jacob began excelling in school, reading more confidently, even writing short stories that amazed his teachers. His spark had returned. And every time Benjamin watched his son learn from Marlene, he felt a twinge of admiration and guilt. He had built an empire from the ground up, yet somehow, he'd failed to build a connection with his own son. One evening, Benjamin came home to find Marlene reading aloud to Jacob from a history book. They were sitting cross-legged on the floor, completely absorbed in the story. Do you know who Rosa Parks was? Marlene asked. Jacob nodded. The lady who didn't give up her bus seat, right? That's right, Marlene said proudly. She was brave. She showed that even quiet people can make big changes. Benjamin leaned against the doorway, smiling faintly. But then, something unexpected happened. Jacob turned and said, "Dad, Miss Marlene says I should write about brave people for my school project. I want to write about her." Benjamin blinked. "About her?" Jacob nodded eagerly. "Yeah. She said she didn't finish school, but she still teaches herself stuff every night. That's brave too." Marlene blushed, lowering her gaze. "Oh, Jacob, that's very kind, but there are people far braver than me." Benjamin didn't speak. He just stared at her, something shifting deep inside him. That night, when he went to bed, sleep didn't come easily. He kept thinking about what his son had said. Brave. Determined. Inspiring. All words that described a woman who earned less in a month than his wristwatch cost, yet somehow, she had done more for his child than anyone else had. He didn't know it yet, but that moment, that small, simple act of kindness between his son and his maid, would soon change everything about the Carter family forever. Benjamin Carter woke up the next morning with a heavy mind. He had spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, turning over the same thought: how could someone with so little give so much? Marlene, the maid who came from a struggling background, had somehow managed to awaken something in both his son and himself. At breakfast, Claire scrolled through her tablet, sipping her green smoothie without looking up. "You're unusually quiet," she said. Benjamin nodded absently. "Just thinking about Jacob's school report. His teacher emailed me, said he's improved remarkably." "That's good," she replied, not raising her eyes. "Guess those tutors are finally doing something right." Benjamin hesitated. "Claire, it's not the tutors. It's Marlene." The glass clinked sharply against the marble countertop. Claire looked up, her expression tightening. "Are we still talking about the maid?" "Yes. She's the one who's been helping Jacob after hours. And apparently, she's made more progress with him in a month than the others did in a year." Claire leaned back in her chair. "Ben, she's an employee. If word gets around that our maid is tutoring our son, people will think we've lost our minds. What will our friends say?" Benjamin gave her a tired look. "Since when do we raise our child based on what our friends might think?" Claire stood, folding her arms. "I'm just saying, this could look bad. You built an image, Benjamin, the perfect life, perfect home, perfect family. We can't blur those lines." "Maybe those lines need to be blurred," he said quietly. Claire's eyes narrowed. "Are you defending her?" "I'm giving credit where it's due." She shook her head, clearly done with the conversation. "Do what you want, but don't expect me to support it." Then she turned and walked out, leaving Benjamin with his untouched coffee and a heart full of conflict. That evening, when he returned home from his downtown office, he found Marlene sitting in the backyard with Jacob under the big maple tree. They were surrounded by open books, pages fluttering in the soft wind. Benjamin watched from the porch for a while before walking over. "Evening, Miss Marlene," he said. She smiled politely. "Good evening, Mr. Carter. We're just going over Jacob's writing assignment." Jacob grinned. "Dad, I wrote my story. Want to hear it?" Benjamin sat beside them on the grass, something he hadn't done in years. "Sure, buddy." Jacob opened his notebook and read aloud, stumbling a little but with enthusiasm. The story was about a woman who worked hard even when no one noticed, who taught a little boy to believe in himself. The ending line made Benjamin's throat tighten. "Sometimes heroes don't wear capes, sometimes they just hold your hand when you're scared to try again." When Jacob finished, Marlene smiled proudly. "That was beautiful, Jacob." Benjamin swallowed hard. "It was," he said softly. After Jacob went inside, Benjamin turned to Marlene. "He's changing because of you. You've done something none of his tutors could do." She shook her head. "No, sir. Jacob already had it in him. He just needed someone to slow down and listen. Maybe that's what I should have done, Benjamin murmured. Marlene glanced at him gently. You're a busy man, sir. It's easy to forget what kids really need. Sometimes, all it takes is time. Her words sank deep into him. Time, the one thing he had in abundance but never gave freely. In the following days, Benjamin started making small changes. He began coming home earlier, sitting with Jacob during his reading sessions, and even sharing dinner at the same table, something Claire found quaint but didn't join in. He learned that Jacob loved history, hated math, and dreamed of becoming a writer one day. Things he had never taken the time to ask. But not everyone was happy about the change. A week later, Claire confronted him again. I heard from Evelyn that her maid saw ours sitting outside with you and Jacob. Ben, it's becoming gossip. People are talking. Benjamin's patience snapped. Let them talk. I don't care what Evelyn or anyone else thinks. If they can't handle the idea of a woman teaching my son kindness, they're the ones who should be embarrassed, not me. Claire's lips tightened. You're letting this woman overstep. What's next? You'll invite her to dine with us. Benjamin looked her in the eye. If she keeps changing my son's life, maybe I will. That night, the house felt colder. Claire avoided him completely, choosing to sleep in the guest room. But Benjamin didn't regret his words. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he was doing something that mattered. A few nights later, Marlene hesitated as Benjamin passed her in the hallway. Mr. Carter. Yes. I appreciate what you said earlier. About letting me help Jacob. But if it's causing trouble between you and Mrs. Carter, I'll step back. Benjamin shook his head. You're not the problem, Marlene. The problem is that I let this house become a business instead of a home. She looked down, her hands wringing nervously. You're a good father, sir. You just needed reminding. Benjamin smiled faintly. And I suppose you're the one reminding me? Marlene blushed. I'm just doing my job, sir. But Benjamin knew she was doing far more than that. Weeks passed. Jacob's school called to inform the Carters that their son had won the district's creative writing award. The principal even asked to meet the person who had inspired his essay, the unsung teacher. At the ceremony, the room was full of proud parents and flashing cameras. When Jacob was called to the stage, he looked small but confident, holding his award with both hands. He took the microphone and said, I want to thank someone special who helped me when everyone else thought I couldn't do it. She's not my teacher at school, but she teaches me a lot about life. Her name is Miss Marlene. A murmur swept through the room. Benjamin turned to see Marlene sitting quietly in the back row, clearly uncomfortable in her simple dress. She hadn't even known Jacob was going to mention her. Tears shimmered in her eyes as everyone clapped, some out of surprise, others out of genuine respect. Benjamin stood and began to clap too. Not politely, but proudly. After the ceremony, Marlene tried to slip out unnoticed, but Benjamin caught up with her. You made him believe in himself, he said. You gave him back something I didn't even realize he'd lost. Marlene smiled through tears. I just did what any person would do if they cared. That's the thing, Benjamin said quietly. You cared when you didn't have to. From that day, things began to shift in the Carter household. Claire remained distant, spending more time in the city, while Benjamin grew closer to his son, and to the quiet woman who had shown them both what truly mattered. One rainy afternoon, Benjamin found Marlene in the kitchen, wiping the counter after finishing her shift. Marlene, he said, there's something I've been meaning to ask. She looked up, curious. I spoke with a friend at the local college. They run adult education programs for people who didn't finish school. I want to pay for your enrollment, all expenses covered. Her eyes widened. Sir, I can't accept that. You've already done so much. It's not charity, Benjamin said softly. It's an investment. You inspired my son. You reminded me what integrity looks like. Let me do this for you. Tears rolled down her cheeks. No one's ever believed in me like that before. He smiled. Then it's about time someone did. That night, Benjamin sat beside Jacob as the boy read a new story, one about gratitude, hope, and second chances. The rain tapped gently against the window, and Benjamin felt something he hadn't in years: peace. He finally understood that true wealth wasn't in his bank account or his mansion, it was in the hearts he helped uplift. And it had taken a humble maid to teach him that lesson.